Excellent. Good evening, everyone. It is 7 o'clock on Thursday, February 3rd, 2022. Call this meeting of the Planning and Zoning Commission Subcommittee on Subdivision Regulations to order. We will begin with a roll call. Mr. Hill.
Alvin Hill, present.
Mr. Lenke.
John B. Lenke, present.
Ms. Salsi.
Jane Salsi, present.
Mr. Williams.
Ray Williams, present.
And Joseph Perotti Brown, present. Item 2, discussion of proposed revisions to subdivision regulations. Tira's already pulled it up, so I will turn it over to you.
All right, thanks, Joe. So we'll pick up right with Article 1. Marla did make some comments in the table of contents, but the table of contents creates itself as I revise the draft, so we can actually skip those because that'll change as we make changes. Just bear with me because I don't have a mouse on this. I have to scroll a slower way. Okay, so Joe and I chatted a bit earlier, and I think the best way to proceed is just to skip right down to where we have pending comments, because we've already been through this once and made the changes you see in the red lines. If you do have specific comments on stuff that we haven't covered, feel free to stop me. We can go back or whatever, but other than that, we'll go in order. And we will go just till 9 o'clock and see how far we get. And then that'll give us an idea of how much we can expect to get through in a given meeting. Just going to change the review view so all we see is comments, because the other stuff is less useful. Okay. So the first comment of substance here is in this item C, separability. If any part or provision of or the application of if any part of provision or oh, that is weird. If any part of provision of or the application of these regulations to any person or circumstances is adjudged invalid by any court of competent jurisdiction, the judgment shall be confined in its operations to the part, provision, or application directly involved in the controversy in which the judgment shall be rendered, and it shall not affect or impair the validity of the remainder of these regulations or the application of them to other persons or circumstances. The governing body hereby declares that it would have enacted the remainder of these regulations even without any such part, provision, or application, which is judged to be valid. So Marla's comment here is, she says, what's the governing body? I went back and I looked at the the currently valid subdivision regulations, and it looks like we copied this straight over. I would concur that it is unclear, what governing body is being referred to here. The governing body for the town is, of course, the Board of Selectmen. But technically the governing body is town meeting. But the owner of the subdivision regulations is the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I would submit that that is what this should be. And do you guys agree?
Ms. Terry, what you're saying is it should be strictly right with the Planning and Zoning Commission, correct? Instead of as the governing body.
Yeah, that seems in context to make the most sense here, because it is the Planning and Zoning Commission that enacts the regulations. It isn't the Board of Selectmen. It isn't the town meeting. The commission makes its own changes and adopts its own regulations. So that is what makes sense to me. But if anybody reads that differently, we can certainly discuss it. Otherwise, I'll just make the change.
Okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense because yes, the P&Z is the governing body for regulations only, nothing else. So, yeah, but then we would have, what verbiage would you think would be correct to put in there as in place of governing body?
I would just change that to the commission, which is the construction that we use throughout the rest of the.
But you gotta be a little bit more specific with the word commission. You have to really maybe just,
Actually, no, you don't, because in the preamble, it says, here and after in these regulations, the Planning and Zoning Commission is referred to as the commission, just like
Oh,
the subdivision
okay.
regulations is referred to as the regulations in the context of this document. Does that make sense?
I'm just double checking with you. Let's
Yep.
just make sure we got the verbiage in or whatever the definitions are gonna be, because we're gonna have people jumping all over this.
Fair enough. Anybody else have any thoughts there?
I would say the commission, seeing it says that up on the top.
Yep. Okay. So let me.
I
just
would say the commission as well.
All right. So I'll make that change. We've got it.
That's one way to get people interested.
So for the folks who haven't been sitting in on these before, this is essentially how we go. We make the changes right into the draft where appropriate. If it is something that requires further comment, I will add it as a sidebar comment and look back at it in the office tomorrow when I'm making the revisions to the rest. All right, scrolling down. And some of these are just little language tweaks here and there. So here's another one from Marla. And this is in regards to Section 8 waivers, Section 8C. Petitions for any such waiver shall be submitted in writing by the applicant or developer at the time when the subdivision plan is filed for the consideration of the commission. The petition shall state fully the grounds for the waiver request and all of the facts called upon by the petitioner. The commission shall hold a public hearing before acting on any such request. A 3/4 of this jumped down funny. A 3/4 vote of the total members of the commission shall be required to approve a waiver. My initial comment here was to determine whether petition is a specific legal process. Marla actually responds to that by referring to the statute. The petition and request are used interchangeably within the statute, and she suggests adding petition to the definitions to contextualize it. I agree with that logic. How do you guys feel about that?
I agree, Alvin Hill.
I'll have to agree with that too, Ms. Tara.
Okay.
Yes, I would agree with that.
All right, PZC. So I will make that change and add that to the definitions tomorrow in the office. Look at that progress already. All right, so moving down to Section 9, enforcement violations and penalties. I had to read this one a couple of times, but I think I know where she was going with it. So Marla's comment on item number 5 specifically, but I believe actually this should be applied to numbers 2 through 5. This paragraph should be moved to Section 2 as it is a prohibition from which an enforcement action falls. See my comment regarding the proposed deletion of existing articles, Section 2 basic requirements, subsections A, B, and C. My response there, I believe Marla's comment is actually related to the current, meaning not what you see before you, but what is currently the valid subdivision regulations. Article 4, Section 2, requirements for the subdivision of land. And if so, then I agree that items 2 through 5 are more descriptive of prohibitions than enforcement actions. And that's the important thing. Section 9 here as titled describes enforcement, violation, and penalties. But if you read 2 through 5, those are describing things which are prohibited, not the enforcement action, the violations, or the penalties that flow from them. So I have suggested moving it to later in the body of the regs, and essentially adding a section that describes prohibitions immediately following the basic requirements for the subdivision of land. And I understand that that's a little weird to think through without looking at it. But that would essentially collapse this section so that it would read as follows. Section 9, enforcement, violations, and penalties. A, it shall be the duty of the zoning enforcement officer of the Planning and Zoning Commission to enforce these requirements and to bring to the attention of the commission any violations of these regulations. And then B, any persons making a subdivision or re-subdivision of land without approval of the commission shall be subject to the penalties provided in the Connecticut General Statutes, and the town and the commission may seek other remedies as provided by the laws of the state of Connecticut. So items 2 through 5 would move to where the requirements for the subdivision of land live, immediately following basic requirements would then describe that which is prohibited, and that would be these items. No owner or agent of the owner of any parcel of land located in a proposed subdivision shall transfer or sell any part of the parcel before a final plat of the subdivision has been approved by and submitted to the town clerk in accordance with the provisions of these regulations. The subdivision of any lot or any parcel of land by the use of metes and bounds description for the purpose of sale, transfer, lease, or development is prohibited. No building permit shall be issued for the construction of any building or structure located on a lot or plan, subdivided or sold in violation of the provisions of these regulations, nor shall the municipality have any obligation to issue certificates of occupancy or to extend utility services to any parcel created in violations of these regulations. And lastly, no street or utility construction shall be started until a plan for such construction has received either conditional or final approval from the commission and been filed with the town clerk. So I know that was a lot all at once, but does that make sense what I'm suggesting?
So, okay, so 2 to 5, you want to move it? to
Correct.
another- Because it did, because just by what you read and everything, it really, to me, it doesn't really fit into that category, so to speak.
Anybody else have any feelings there?
Well, that doesn't have nothing to do with enforcement and violations or penalties. So
Correct.
I would say to move them.
Okay. Anybody else while I'm making the note here?
I also agree with that, to move it.
Okay. Basic requirements. Okay. Find the next one. Let's move so slowly. Okay, so you will see here that this is Article 4 definitions, because we had previously moved definitions to the end to be consistent with how we currently have the zoning regulations formatted. But everybody here was on the meeting where Deb from the online codification project recommended that definitions actually move to this spot. So in keeping with that logic, I'm planning on moving it back to Article 2. I just haven't changed the header here yet. In addition to the comments we have on the screen, bear with me for another second, because I went through today near the end of the day and did a quick document search for all of the terms in the definitions. Some of them don't even occur in the body of the regulations. So I just want to also run those by you, but there are comments on the definitions themselves as well. So we'll go through those. All right, so Marla has some specific recommendations up here, and then she made some other ones as well. And I've got a handwritten copy that I'm going to be bouncing back and forth to make sure we get all those. She recommends adding definitions for CONDOT or CTDOT, whichever acronym we choose to use. They are used interchangeably by the agency. Also aquifer protection regulations and stormwater management facility. I'm fine with adding them. I will point out, however, that the term aquifer protection regulations does not appear in the body of the regulations. So Joe's coming back in. So typically you would not define terms that are not referred to in the body of your text. I don't know if that means Marla is suggesting that we refer to the aquifer protection regulations in some edits to some other sections. So I'm going to leave that for now. But I just want to confirm as we go as well, the where the definitions do or do not appear. So we'll go through these one by one. ADT, average daily traffic, definitely occurs, as does a budding owner. Agriculture does not occur within the body of the subdivision regulations, which makes sense because agriculture is a land use and these regulations govern the subdivision of land. So it would be my recommendation to remove the definition of agriculture. It is defined in the zoning regulations, but it does not appear to be needed here. But this is for you guys to decide, not for me.
I agree with that. Remove it.
Anybody else?
I'll go along with that, Ms. Tara. I think
Yeah,
if it's in the regulations, and it doesn't really need to be in the subdivision because subdivision is self-explanatory. It has nothing to do with agriculture unless somewhere down the road, the farmland, so to speak, gets sold off to a developer, then that's when it would change, in my opinion.
Yep, if it's not in the subdivision regulations, we don't need to define it in the subdivision regulation definitions, I think.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure we're all in agreement before I pull it out. All right, applicant definitely occurs, and we also have a comment from Marla asking what it means to have an interest in a parcel of land. And I'll read her comment verbatim. Consider providing specification for what an interest in a parcel of land means. I can have an interest but no legal right to apply for the subdivision of a parcel. Also consider adding a clarification for what an appointed agent is. Who appoints the agent? I'm actually less concerned about the second. I think an agent can be appointed by several people in several different contexts. What I wonder is Marla's first question as simple as saying an appointed agent having a legal interest in a parcel of land? Does that clear that concern?
I'm still a little confused over that, but.
Well, I think she's correct in saying that, what is an interest? I could be interested in buying something, but if I haven't bought it, I have no legal right to do anything with it or make an application on it. A legal interest is different. So I suspect that that's as simple as it needs to be, but if anybody else has any thoughts there.
That was my instinct, Tira, as well, my initial thought, but I'm happy to hear any divergent opinions.
Yeah, that's almost like buying a car. You might have an interest in it, but you don't have ownership of it. So you really don't have nothing to say. You can't really say nothing about it. Yeah, that makes a little sense.
Why not legal interest?
Yeah,
Just-
I think that's where we're headed here. Oops.
Raises a good question.
So any person, firm, corporation, partnership, association, or appointed agent having a legal interest in a parcel of land and who applies to the commission for approval of a subdivision of such land. Written consent shall be required from the owner of record of the premises if the applicant is not the owner.
Yeah, that sounds better than just an interest.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. A lot of these changes, particularly in where it's just wording and not concepts, are probably pretty easy once we look back at them again. We've already done a lot of the work of making these definitions better than they were, at least clearer to read. Let's go. Oh, I was going through which ones are included. My bad. My bad. Come on. Okay. So application obviously occurs in the body of the regs. Area of special concern does not appear. So I would suggest removing that. Land areas where soil conditions or topography.
Tara,
Yes.
why would you remove that? Areas of special concern. I think that should be left there.
Because the term does not occur within the body of the regulations.
Okay,
So the glossary is, obviously intended to refer back to what these terms mean in the context of this document. And it's not there. So
it's not there.
yeah, so there's nothing to define. If it turns out I go through and somehow the search, the find term function missed it, which is not impossible, I suppose. We can always add it back in. I've got the record of it, but it does not occur.
Now, what would happen if it ends up having to be like an engineered system? In a subdivision, would that apply to that?
Well, the definitions don't apply to the engineering requirements. The definitions are literally just that. If somebody is looking through the document, sees a term and doesn't know what it means in context, they would refer here.
Okay.
So it doesn't change anything that would be required. The requirements are set out in the body of the regulations. But you do want to have your definitions correct. You want them to mean what they appear to mean. So that's the point of the definitions or the glossary. And, just to go back to agriculture is super, super important, but the subdivision regulations do not refer to it. So there is no reason to define it within the document. It's the same concept here. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right. Moving on. As-built plans definitely occurs in the regulations, as does Board of Selectmen. Obviously, bond is referred to often, bonding of various kinds. Buffer strip does occur, as does building and certificate of occupancy. This is an interesting one. Certification. We have defined as a signed written approval by the Planning and Zoning Commission or its designated agent confirming that a plan complies with the applicable requirements of these regulations. The term certification appears several times in the body of these regulations. In no place does it appear to have that meaning. So I'm not really sure what to do about this other than to redefine it based on what it actually is saying. I will say that I haven't looked at those instances closely enough to try to determine what the alternate definition should be. I certainly can do so. But that was an interesting case, I thought. I'm just going to drop this here. What I did notice about it was that it doesn't seem to be referring to a specific thing, which is a certification. It was a more general term. So I think I need to work with that quite a bit, actually.
So we just put a note on that and then everybody can go through and look at that and then we can put our heads together. You can put up what you would, you know, what you think, and then we can, put, you know.
Yep. Yeah, I can absolutely do that. And again, for those of you who haven't been part of this, which I think is just Ray and Jane, previously, my MO on this is the day at, well, usually the day after we have one of these meetings, I go through any changes that we couldn't make sort of at the moment into the document. I make, and then I send them out for further comment to the commission. So that, you know, you have essentially a week to get that commentary back to me, and then we can just take a quick look at it in the next meeting.
Tira, the word plan is a part of this certification. Is there a way identifying what type of plan? Submitted plan, under review plan? What type of plan are we talking about?
That is a good question, Alvin. So I'm adding that here.
Yeah, I think that needs to be defined a little bit better. I agree with Alvin.
Plan is. Okay, so that'll be part of what I look at. Okay. All right, Collector Street definitely occurs in the regulations. Commercial use does occur. It only occurs once, but it does occur. It would be adding a definition for CTDOT or CONDOT. Now here we have one of our big points of contention, which is the cul-de-sac. Let me expand these comments. Expand them all. Oh, I can only expand one at a time.
Do one at a time. Be
Yeah,
easy.
well, I have to anyway, it looks like. So cul-de-sac as currently suggested is as follows: a road which has only one intersection with another right-of-way. The outlet from the cul-de-sac road is the same as the entrance. A cul-de-sac road shall not have any other intersecting road or roads for the entire length of the road other than its entrance and outlet. A cul-de-sac road cannot exceed 1,000 feet from the center line of the intersecting street to the center of the turnaround. The cul-de-sac road shall not provide exclusive frontage to more than 12 proposed or existing building lots. A cul-de-sac is distinct from any other dead-end street in having a turnaround at the closed end. Within the town of Thompson, cul-de-sacs may only be proposed as private roads or shared driveways. So we have a bunch of comments on this on the side from Janet, from me, from Marla. Going back kind of a ways, here's an older one from Janet. Under the definition of cul-de-sac, I suggest that the first words begin a dead-end street that, and she means that as opposed to a road which has only one intersection with another right-of-way. So that would replace that. Consider removing the 1,000-foot length and allowing it to serve up to 25 dwelling units or lots. Sometimes it is necessary to go a few hundred feet to get past wetlands or steep slope before actual housing lots are appropriate. That's comment A. I'll read them all and then we'll discuss all the points. Oh, yeah, I was going to bring this up too. Even within this definition, there is language here that is actually regulatory, not defining. So no matter, so if we decide to continue to address cul-de-sacs within the body of the regulations, some of this language would have to be separated out and put in there. That's just a sort of a technicality. And then so here is Marla's comment. What is the reasoning to limit? What is the reasoning to limit cul-de-sacs to private roads or shared driveways? In essence, excluding all cul-de-sac roads and proposed subdivisions from becoming a town road. Those of us familiar with these arguments know that the reason to limit cul-de-sacs to private ways is the relatively high cost for maintenance versus the overall benefit to the town. And we do not have consensus on this yet. So once we get into the body of the regulations, this is going to be a substantive discussion again. There are definitely members of the commission who believe that cul-de-sacs should be allowed to be town accepted roads. The director of DPW and myself definitely believe they should be private roads only. I'd rather get into that conversation when we have more commissioners and just deal with the definition for now. But let's go and see what the other comments are that relate back to this.
Mr. That's the cul-de-sac. I think the last time when we were talking about all of this, it was to really bring it up with all the commissioners, because there was still a consensus, it should be a private road or private entity, so to speak.
Well, you're right, John. That's still the controversy. And that is an item that I think the commissioners should take a voice vote on, because the consensus is not unanimous regardless.
Correct.
So the arguments are going to have to be made. Yeah.
But I think that's going to have to come in, that it should be more or less presented to the full commission, and not take it out of the subcommittee, but to try to maybe bring it in on say like a correspondence or something like that, to get, now that we have more members of the commission that night, and get their point of, the ones that will be there to get what their thoughts are, and then send that whole piece of thoughts of back and forth, send it back to subcommittee to reevaluate that before we do make the final cut.
I see what you're saying, John. You want to discuss this separately in a regular meeting?
Yes, because this way we won't have to go down this road again. Okay. So I personally think that's what we should do. There's some items I think as we go along with the sub-regulations that we're gonna have to do the same thing down the road. I think it's a better idea. And we can eliminate all this, that we're trying to beat the public, or so to speak. So let's just put it out there, and let's just make an effort at it, okay? So we can stop this criticism going on.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Lenke on that.
Yeah, that's fine. And I have to say, I am more comfortable with having the full commission look at this item, because it is one of the more controversial points for sure.
Yes, it is. It is. And in this way, we're doing our best, okay, with the group and the subcommittee. All we're here to do is to go over the verbiage, go over what's right, wrong, or indifferent before it does get presented. Like the last meeting or the meeting before, I said it has to be presented. The subcommittee gets everything finalized, verbiage, whatever, but it could still be changed when it gets to the regular commission. And and we could still end up evaluating it 2 or 3 meetings before we do decide to go through the regular route, where we have to do the application, et cetera, et cetera. Let the public see what we finally came up with as a finalized, piece of document. And, before we vote, we vote on it, okay? It might take a little bit longer, but, let's stop this. No matter what we do, we're gonna get criticized. So let's do it this way. I think it'll be the best thing for all of us down the road.
So Chairman Dr. Perotti Brown, how do you feel about that? Bringing this topic, just the topic of cul-de-sacs, into a regular meeting? Are you still there, by the way?
Definition of cul-de-sac, please.
Yes.
Yeah, I was just gonna weigh in. I think that's a good idea. And I actually thank John for bringing it up. I think it's a sensible way to move forward.
Yeah, it's a big topic all on its own,
Yes.
Not getting on my soapbox, but as you know, a lot of people think a lot of things about cul-de-sacs. They think they're safer. People like to live on them, but they cost the town a relatively high amount in terms of maintenance. But anyway, that's my
Well,
soapbox. I'll get off it and we'll talk about it. In a regular meeting.
No. This is what the subcommittee's all about there, Tara. It's
Yeah,
not
John,
being on
please.
soapbox or anything, but
Please.
this is how we kind of like get things out to everybody. Should the cul-de-sacs be private? Yeah, sure, because it's like a lot of people feel
Yeah,
it's
okay.
part of the cost.
Yeah.
So whatever.
got it.
but
We've got it. We'll get it on either for February or March, depending on.
what that would go under? What would it go under? Correspondence, or would you rather put it under new business?
I would just put it under new business as a discussion topic.
Yes.
But
Okay.
I'll talk with Cindy about that. She might think that it belongs in a different way.
Well, as long as it's a separate item, and whatever it takes, but it needs to be done.
Okie doke. Moving on. Date of receipt definitely occurs. Let's see. We have some comments here for need to check the statute for the correct language. Okay, I will do that, Marla. She also suggests later on adding days, and I concur with that because it is unclear in some of the text whether days refers to calendar or business days. I believe it is almost always calendar days unless otherwise defined, and that's what Marla has suggested adding. So I am just sort of planning on doing that.
Is she suggesting using business days as like like
No,
5
quite
days?
quite the opposite. The construction is almost always that days are real calendar days. There are some occasions when it might be business days. So that would essentially just be what the definition would say.
Okay.
Okay, so here's another one. Dead end street does not occur. The term dead end street does not occur in the subdivision regulations. So I am suggesting that we purge that. Unless I hear an objection. All right. Developer obviously does occur, as the development. Disturbed area, yes, occurs. Now this is interesting. Marla did make a comment to keep the original language. Now I think that I looked at the original language. Actually, I take that back. I may or may not have looked at the current subdivision regulations for this language. What we did do for sure is matched this to what is in the zoning regulations. So if we're defining it one way in one document, we should be defining it in the same way in a second document, unless there's a specific reason not to do so. And the zoning regulations have already been reviewed by everybody on the commission, by town council, by Marla and by me. So I am going to suggest that we leave this as is. But if anybody happens to have the current subdivision language in front of them to compare, we certainly can do that.
Hang on, let me get, if I can dig down and find it. Hopefully. You're talking the latest, I mean, the,
We're talking what
08
is,
one?
what is currently in effect. Yeah, so the 08.
yeah, the
What does-
fifth.
What does
Okay.
it say for disturbed area?
Hang on a minute, I gotta get my fingers to work here. Been outside chopping ice.
Page 103, John.
So
No,
what was
do-
that again?
Page 103.
Alvin, do you have it in front of you?
If you got it in front of you, run it out, go with it.
Hold on. Ah,
Okay, I got 103.
All right, well, whichever one of you wants to read it.
Hang on a minute.
Disturbed area, an area where the ground cover is destroyed or removed, thus leaving the land subject to an accelerated erosion.
Okay, so those two are very, very close. So given that, I would suggest, I mean, linguistically, there's almost no difference there.
I agree, Kara. There's no difference there. I would just leave it as is.
Yeah, I think so. Anybody else feel very strongly that the current subdivision?
Well,
language-
if there's no difference in everything, let's
Just
just
leave
leave
it.
it alone. Long as it's compatible, that's all that matters, right?
Yeah. Sense.
I do have a problem though. My subdivision regulations, I got only go up to page 72.
You mean the current ones?
Addition number 5.
That's
There is-
interesting, Ray. If
That's that binder that you gave me.
okay, I will correct that for you and get you the rest of the pages. I did not realize that.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad you brought that up. Look at that. We discovered something else new. Okay, driveway obviously does occur in the regulations. We've got
Page
common-
107.
Yep.
Word for word.
oh
I
yes,
don't have that.
right. So that is actually the existing language, which is not great. So here's Marla's comment: why an approved town street? What about driveways on private roads? Yada yada. But my prior comment is actually here. So this is my suggested definition instead of what you read here. A private access way connecting one or more buildings to a traveled right-of-way, public or private. How do you guys feel about that?
Let's keep it simple, Tira. Instead of approved, let's see, what word, accepted?
Except if we're talking about encouraging private roads, right, then the town doesn't accept those. Right, so that they're, I mean, I suppose in a,
Then it's not an approved either.
right, so that's why I'm suggesting this alternative, a private access way connecting one or more buildings to a traveled right-of-way, public or private. Joe,
That does cover both.
yeah,
Does that mean we need to change our zoning regs?
no. No, because all the stuff we have about driveways is in the subdivision regs. So this is our current project. Fellow linguist Joe,
Yeah, no, I like that suggestion, Tira. It covers both, obviously, private and public roads. I think it's a good solution for what we're looking at.
anybody else have strong feelings here before I make this note?
No, I like what you've suggested, Tira.
If the professor's in it, okays it, he's the man.
That's what happens when you have two language wonks involved.
There you go.
All right.
Everybody has their specialty here.
All right, dwelling definitely occurs, easement definitely occurs. Eastern Connecticut Conservation District / ECCD definitely occurs. Marla has a very minor language change, easy to make.
To what? Erosion?
To ECCD. Erosion is up next. Obviously, it occurs in the body of the regulations, and let's see what her. Oh, she's suggesting keep the original language, and it looks like I looked at it and found that the original language is grammatically incorrect. Alvin, could you read that aloud so I can confirm that that's actually the case?
Which one do you want me to read aloud here?
Erosion in the current subdivision
Ye-
regulations.
In the current zoning? Erosion.
No,
the-
current subdivision, not current zoning.
Not in zoning. What do you, no, I'm a little confused here. What do you want me to read?
The definition of erosion that is in the current, meaning the 2008 edition of the subdivision regulations. Because Marla is making the suggestion to keep the original language. It is that given in CGS section 22A to 327 Soil Erosion and Sediment Control Act. But I looked at that language and it's not a correct sentence. So maybe I'm missing something. So that's why I want you to read it.
This is the same that what's in the one that I have, but I know I have an older one.
Well, the older one is what I'm curious about, because that appears to be what Marla is asking us to go back to.
Okay, that's exactly what it says.
Interesting. So I'm just going to disregard this comment then, because I don't know where else it's going. Okay. Excavation does occur. Final subdivision plan, yes. Floodplain, yes. I don't remember why I have this highlighted. Oh, I do know why I have this highlighted. I wanted to check to see if these also occur in these regulations, and I haven't done that, so I'll have to go back to that. Oh. Okay, moving on. All right, frontage definitely occurs, as does grading. Impervious surface. And I think that this is, no, I don't think, I know that this is used synonymously with the term impervious cover. And in fact, I think impervious cover is used more often, so I may change that to cover. Here is Marla's comment. So the definition as proposed here is an area of a lot that has been altered in such a way as to be impenetrable by surface water. Such surfaces include, that's a typo.
I wonder what that word meant.
It's a whole new idea. Such surfaces include, but are not limited to, roofs, paved areas, examples, roadways, driveways, parking lots, sidewalks, patios, and swimming pools. All right, so Marla's comment on that. What about impervious surfaces caused by exposed bedrock that have not otherwise been altered by man?
Oh, come on.
Perhaps it would be better to, well, let's hear what she has to say. Perhaps it would be better to say any surface area that is impenetrable to surface water, including, but not limited to, exposed bedrock. So she's really just asking to add exposed bedrock. And then saying for the purposes of these regulations is standing, oh no, that's a question. For the purposes of these regulations, is standing water considered to be an impervious surface? I would say no, standing water is not an impervious surface because it's not.
That defies common sense.
It's not permanent. Yeah, that's a strange question to me, but all right. So she's suggesting to add exposed bedrock. That's the gist of her comment. And I double checked, and this is the definition which we included in the updated zoning regulations.
correct.
So we matched this to that. I have no particular objection to adding exposed bedrock as an example of types of surfaces. But if we do that, then we should also amend the zoning regulations. No problem with doing that. We've committed to doing that once a year. I would make the observation that the very phrase includes but are not limited to means there are more things that are automatically in here. So I don't think that's necessary, but I will defer to what you guys think is most prudent.
I like Marla's idea, Kira, of any surface area other than an area.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Any rather than an. Okay. Yeah.
That is impenetrable
Yeah.
to surface water. Any surface area.
Surface area. Yeah. Okay, so if we do that, you guys are comfortable with me adding that to the list of things to be amended in the zoning regulations in our annual update?
Yes.
Yeah, so at least it coincides. Isn't that what we're trying to do, is bring the sub-regs and the regulations
Yep.
together?
Yep, we want them to align as
Correct.
closely as possible. Okay, all right, I've got my note. Improvement definitely is in the text, as is inspection, as is landscaping. Local street does not appear. It is not a term used. Just letting you guys know that.
Do we have it? I don't remember anything about that in our regular regs.
Well, it's because street design isn't in the regular regulations, in the zoning regulations. It only appears in the subdivision regulations and in whatever ordinances govern roads. Lot obviously does occur. Oh, these are out of order. Which I think we did actually fix in the version of the draft that I created, but didn't get carried over when Marla made her red line. Out of alpha order. Okay. Interior lot definitely does occur, or lot interior as we have it constructed here. Lot frontage line does occur. Low impact development definitely occurs. Maintenance bond, obviously, NDDH. Now, this is another one we're gonna have a substantive conversation on this concept of net buildable area. We took that concept out of the zoning regulations and carried that logic into this document as well. Marla objects to that very strongly, and she sent a justification for that. And I have the counter argument, which was provided by Janet. We're going to go over that, she and I, and the two chairs of inland wetlands and zoning and Cindy, to see if we can come to a compromise on that. But I think this might be another topic, and Joe, you can, maybe we can decide this after that meeting. Maybe like cul-de-sacs, it might be controversial enough to take into a regular meeting. Marla's
agree.
point, yeah, Marla's point is essentially that net buildable area is a more protective construction. There is a counter argument to that, which is that you can simply describe, I don't have it in front of me, so I shouldn't go on. What I'll do is I'll copy both of those arguments into a single document and present it to you guys.
Yeah, and I agree, Tara, that it should go to the board. That way it takes the onus off of everybody if there's a vote on it, like the cul-de-sac.
Okay, I'm gonna make that note here.
Yeah,
Yes.
thanks. I was just weighing in. I think it's a good idea. And thank you, Jane, for sharing your thoughts too.
Before final this. I mean, obviously, all of the concepts ultimately go to the Planning and Zoning Commission, but you know, it's going to be a big book to approve or disapprove. So these
Right.
these individual items probably
Merit specific attention.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because we can get them out of the way and have it pretty much settled. So when it goes back to the subcommittee and we finish it up and then put it all together, you know, put it in the mixer and get it all mixed up and then send it right back to the regular committee and, you know, and review it again and, you know, make sure everything's the way we want it before we get it finalized.
Yep.
You know, before we vote on it.
Just
So,
here, just so you know, I might be incommunicado the next couple of minutes, just responding to something here on campus.
okay,
But
I'll see
listening as best
you
I
when
can.
you come back in, so that's fine. So open space, I just am pointing out here that the only part of this that you see in front of you that is actually a definition is the first sentence. The other pieces are already addressed in the regulations governing open space in the subdivision regulations. So I am suggesting that the second and third sentences be purged here, but I'll just read them so we all understand exactly where we are. Open space, land set aside for parks, playgrounds, active or passive recreation, or conservation purposes on any subdivision plan and not including unbuilt land on any single lot. That's the definition. These sentences are regulatory. Open space shall be dedicated in a location approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission and regulated in accordance with applicable provisions of these regulations. The designation and purpose of the open space shall be noted on the subdivision mylars. So again, to clarify, what I'm saying is not that these sentences are invalid, just that they don't belong here. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yeah, subdivision shouldn't be it with anything with open space.
Well, there is a section on open space in the subdivision regulations, a very important section. But that's where this language belongs rather than in definitions. It's already, I mean, in fact, it's already there.
Mhm.
So that,
So there, if it's already there, then why are we dealing with it right here?
right, I'm just clarifying that that is my intent here, to purge these two sentences and just leave that which is an actual definition.
Kira, what is unbuilt land?
It's just another synonym for undeveloped land or raw land or vacant land. It's not a term in itself that has particular weight or meaning.
Could be anything. It could be a piece of property that's all wooded and then that's, all trees and everything, a wooded piece of property, it's got all nothing but it's
It's
still virgin.
undeveloped land, not unbuilt. We're not playing God. We don't build land.
You're correct, Alvin. I think that should say undeveloped land.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yep. So add undeveloped land, undeveloped as the first word of the sentence.
Nope, where it says
No.
unbuilt. Switch unbuilt to undeveloped.
Oh, I see.
Include-
Yep, yep, yep.
Including unbuilt land. It should be undeveloped land.
I got you. I got
Right.
you.
And the rest of that, you are correct. That should not, from there, from the end of that sentence down should be moved out of there.
Yep.
In my opinion.
Well, you said it's someplace else, correct?
Yeah, it's already addressed in the section on open space, so it's
Yeah, we
both.
don't need, it's redundant. We don't need it there.
All righty. Okay, where are we here? Owner does occur as a term. Scrolling. Passive solar does occur in the appendix. Oops. On energy conservation. Jeez. There's things about this laptop that drive me nuts. I do kind of wish I had a mouse for it instead of my big fat fingers. Okay, here we are. Performance bond definitely occurs. So pervious surface is not a term that occurs. It seems to be included here in contrast to impervious surface. But there is no reference to it. So this is another one I'm just recommending we strike.
Yes.
All right, so here's a comment from Marla that's going to look kind of odd because it doesn't refer back to anything. She is referring to the definition of person that is in the existing subdivision regulations. This is a term that we intentionally struck from the zoning regulations because it was constructed so broadly that anyone, anything, any entity, anything could be a person, and therefore the term was fundamentally meaningless. I still believe that. If the commission would like to add the definition of person back in here, we certainly may. I do not think that it illuminates or adds anything to the understanding of these regulations.
Agreed.
Okay. Anybody else have any feelings there?
Nope, I agree with Mr. Hill.
All right. Plan of we're going to add petition, but that note I have earlier in the document. Plan of conservation. Oh, look at that. Jess is coming in. Plan of conservation and development is definitely referenced. Am I on the right page here? Yeah. Am I missing a page? Oh, there we go. Private road, private street, private way. So the term private road definitely occurs. Marla is commenting here on including the synonyms private street, private way. Recommend using only one term to mean the same thing. Delete reference to private street as it is not used anywhere in the proposed regs. Okay, that's fair. There is a distinction between the terms usage a private road or a private way. A private road is a type of private way, but a private way is not necessarily a private road. I'll provide greater detail in the near future. I do think she's right, though. A private driveway is a private way, but is not a private road.
Correct.
But a private road or a private driveway is a private way. So she is correct there.
Maybe we should just delete the private street off of that.
That I think definitely. The question is, I think, based on Marla's comment, do we define private way and private road separately? She does have a logical point there. They are not exactly synonymous.
I think they should be defined separately, Tara.
Yeah,
So
I
there's
think,
no confusion and no questions.
Yeah, most definitely.
Because we do have some private roads and or private ways.
okay. Honestly, sometimes I look at this stuff at the office and I look at it for so long that it makes my eyes cross, and I'm not necessarily sure that I get the concept, but I think that does clarify. Okay, public improvements, that definitely occurs. Recordable does not appear. So I'm suggesting we strike.
Can you define that for me, Tara, please?
Recordable?
Yeah, I'm not quite sure. I've read it, and like you, I'm looking at it and reading it, and it's not registering.
A plan or other document of such form, material, and size as to be suitable for filing or recording in the office of the town clerk in compliance with Connecticut general statutes as amended, yada, yada. So I believe what this term is intended to mean is that documents that are received in a certain format are recordable. However, the term doesn't occur. So I don't think we need this.
Okay, after that, yeah, I agree. I don't think so. We don't need it.
I haven't read through it. There's nothing in applications about recordable.
I did a document search this afternoon. I took about an hour and went through each of these,
And it's not there?
and it's not there.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I was just wondering.
Okay, residential access street, yes, that occurs. No, I'm sorry, that does not. No, that can't be right. I know that occurs. Let me look at my appendix. That's interesting. So residential access street absolutely does occur. And when I typed it in, it said it didn't. I wonder if it's because I typed it in with a typo in it. Because it's in the road classification. So I'm certainly going to leave the term. However, what I will say is that oh, I see what's going on here. Okay, so all of this language for residential access street after the first sentence is that same thing. It's regulatory, not descriptive. So I would say from sentence 2 onward, this is dealt with in the appendices, but I'll read it for clarification, for clarity. Residential access street, any street or highway that provides frontage or for access to lots and carries traffic having destination or origin on the street itself and designed to carry the least amount of traffic at the lowest speed. That's the sentence that is definitive. The others are regulatory. So therefore I am suggesting as earlier with open space that sentences 2, 3, and 4 be struck from definitions and just left where they are. You want me to read the whole thing?
Yes, please.
Residential access street, any street or highway that provides frontage for access to lots and carries traffic having destination or origin on the street itself and designed to carry the least amount of traffic at the lowest speed. Residential access streets shall be designed to convey an ADT between 100 and 250. Each half of a loop street may be classified as a single residential access street, but the total traffic volume generated on the loop street should not exceed 500 ADT, nor should it exceed 250 ADT at any point of traffic concentration. A residential access street shall conform to the design criteria and cross-section of these regulations. So to my eye and ear, only the first sentence is definitive rather than regulatory.
Correct.
Right.
I agree with that, Tara.
Okay, here we go. Let me make the note here.
Tara, did you see my question to the Director of the Public Works?
I did, and that was an interesting question, Alvin. So when we get into the discussion of those
I
specs,
think it's an easy one. I think it's an easy one. We set off a fire alarm.
when we get into the discussion of those specs, yes, that's absolutely something we should be talking about, because what good does it do us to describe standards that we can't conform to?
Pizza.
But that's something also that I'll have to go over with Rich. And he and I have gone over this stuff, and he has provided me commentary. He didn't happen to include that point
We didn't, no.
when we went over it, interestingly.
Okay, perfect. Like I said, it's an easy one for you tonight.
Joe, are you talking to us or your kids?
Sorry.
I just couldn't tell that time. Okay, residential lane does occur. Let's see. What is Marla's? Oh no, that was my as above. So do we have the same problem here? Yes, on a smaller scale. Residential lane, any street or highway that provides frontage for access to lots and carries traffic having destination or origin on the street itself, designed to carry no more than 100 vehicles per day. That's definitive. And then again, we have that same problem here. We have regulatory language. A residential lane street shall conform to design criteria and cross-section for a residential access street of these regulations.
I would suggest doing the same as we did with the other, just get rid of, take out line 3 and 4.
Okay, interestingly here, residential collector street does not occur as a term, but collector street does. So I am going to suggest that we
It's
call it,
it's understood as residential.
well, except it isn't really, because collector streets can occur in commercial districts. They can occur in mixed use districts. So I actually think it is appropriate to take the term residential out and just move collector street up. But welcome to discuss that.
Should we do the same as the other and put two definitions, one for residential collector street and then just a plain collector street?
Let me take a look back at the appendices again, because what we have in the appendices is the classification. So we have 5 classifications. A collector street, and to give that some context, Route 12 is a collector street. It's a street that takes traffic at a relatively high volume for a local road. Right, so, and what that means in terms of average daily traffic per day in vehicles is 500 plus. So that can be residential, non-residential, both residential and non-residential. It's the highest classification for local roads for average traffic per day. After that, you get to sub-collector streets, which we currently have termed as residential sub-collector streets. Although the point has been made by a couple of the engineers that the word residential is probably not that helpful, that it should just be a sub-collector.
Tara, I agree with that. I think residential collector street should be collector street. The same, get rid of the residential the word in sub collector street.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree with that.
All right, so
Because it can be applied to, like you said, industrial, whatever. So residential should be taken out.
know these typos don't matter to anybody but me and my notes, but okay. All right, moving on. Yeah, so same thing with residential sub-collector street. I would say that this is probably, although it does appear as with that term in the appendix, the sub-collector is kind of the same as the collector. It can be at either scale. So I'm gonna make the same.
Because we do have a few sub-collector streets that are very, very well traveled.
Yep. Ditto comment above. Oh, in fact, and in here is an older comment from Janet where she's making exactly that point. There may be an industrial park or commercial subdivision, so perhaps the term residential shouldn't be before all street types. All right. Re-subdivision does occur, but there is a difference between what we have here and the statutory language. I would suggest that we should probably match it to the statutory language, but I'll read them both just to make sure that we're all on the same page. Re-subdivision. The further division of lots or the relocation of lot lines of any lot or lots within a subdivision previously approved and recorded by law. Re-subdivision is further defined in section 8-18 of the Connecticut General Statutes and in these regulations, and shall conform to the requirements of sections 8-25 and 8-26 of the Connecticut General Statutes. That's in this draft. The exact language of CGS 8-18 re-subdivisions is a change in a map of an approved or recorded subdivision or re-subdivision if such change A, affects any street layout shown on such map, B, affects any area reserved thereon for public use, or C, diminishes the size of any lot shown thereon and creates an additional building lot if any of the lots shown thereon have been conveyed after the approval or recording of such map. Now that is legalese and not necessarily the easiest thing to follow, but it is the actual statutory language. So
I would think put that in, then there can be no questions asked, Tara. Nobody can say it's state statutes.
Yeah, that's it. Go by the state.
Yep.
Everybody comfortable with that?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense.
100% agree.
Okay. All right. Right of way definitely occurs in the text. Let's see. Come on. Sediment. Oh, Marla's comment is not sediment. It's for a term that was stricken from the original, and she's just confirming that it doesn't exist. Okay, so that's fine. We can disregard that. Sediment definitely occurs. Single-family dwelling does not occur in the subdivision regulations. A single-family dwelling, kind of like agriculture, it's a use. It has nothing to do actually with this, with the subdivision of land. So I'm recommending we strike.
Pull it. Hurry up, getting close to my tequila time.
Hey, I have this scheduled for 2 hours, brother. Actually, if we can get through through Articles 1 and now 2, which is definitions, I'm perfectly fine with cutting this once we're through the definitions, if you guys want.
Yeah, that works for me, Tara. I've got a family situation that's arisen and I've got to leave.
Okay, and if you have to drop out, Jane, that's perfectly fine. All of this obviously is going to come up for a final review
Okay,
to the whole
all right.
commission anyway.
All right, I appreciate that. I do have to go.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good
All right,
night.
Good night, all.
Good night.
All right. here we have another curious comment from Marla for soil. Now, what Marla is suggesting is keep the original language, that given in CGS section 22A-327. I don't know what she's referring to by that, because the original language from the existing subdivision regulations is one sentence: any unconsolidated mineral or organic material of any origin. So I don't know what Marla's getting at here. This definition was copied of soil, was copied and pasted from the updated zoning regulations. And I believe we made this change based on Marla's comment at the time. So I don't think there's anything to be changed here. If anybody sees any.
Do you still have the record of that, of the originals, of the original when it was first? This way we can say, this is what you suggested the first time.
You mean Marla's original comment from the zoning regulations?
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I have every email I've ever received in comments on this.
But is she being a little,
I just don't know what she's referring to, because if she's referring to the original language is one sentence: any unconsolidated mineral or organic material of any origin. So this is obviously more extensive than that. And I'm quite certain that it was based on the recommendations she made when we did the zoning regulations. So like I say, I think there's nothing to be done here other than leave it alone as presented.
I'd say leave it alone because it's in a definition of in zoning.
Yeah.
In my subdivision, soil is just any unconsolidated material or organic matter of any origin. That's what I have in my subdivision for the definition of soil.
Yeah. So like I say, I can't imagine that that's what she means, because she's asking for language that is much more complex. So I'm pretty sure that we're okay here. Unless somebody else sees something here that I'm not seeing, but.
again, we're trying to bring it into what, balance it up with the regulation. So if we did it the first time on the regs, we just leave it alone. Like Al says, it's comparing the two together, so we don't have to have one's vague and one says this and the other one's vague. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know where she was going with that, but maybe it was just an error on her part. So I think we can leave that. Now she does have. Go ahead, John.
I was just gonna say, just take note of this and ask her again, what did she mean by that?
Yeah, I will.
So I'm just throwing it because you got me confused a little bit over it. You know what I'm saying? What she's saying now is what was said before.
Yeah. Okay, so she does bring something up for the next one: soil erosion and sediment control plan. She suggests adding a line of text. So I'll read it as is, and then I'll read her suggestion. I think it's a fine one. I just want to run it by you guys. Soil erosion and sediment control plan: a scheme that minimizes soil erosion and sedimentation resulting from development and includes, but is not limited to, a map and a written narrative. And then, according to Marla's suggestion, as described in section 22A-327 of the Connecticut General Statutes. I think that's a fine suggestion, and I'm generally inclined to add it. Okay.
Add it in. As long as we got the, you got the state statutes all in there, can't say we're making this up, we're going by what the state statutes are.
Yep.
We can always refine that a little bit, but as long as you use the state statutes, nobody's gonna jump up and down over it.
Yeah. Okay, soil types does occur. Soils map. Now I have comments here from Marla that needs research, may want to reference the updated data on USDA website, yada, yada, yada. However, the The term soils map does not occur in the subdivision regulations. So I can either look into this or we can strike it. I'll do either. I don't really care.
If it's not in there, we don't need it, I don't think.
That has been the direction we're going throughout. I don't want to make assumptions. I want to say, are we in agreement? Does
Well,
not
again, like
occur.
what Mr. Perotti just said, you know, we're gonna end up going over this again anyway down the road. You know, it's just the idea is that we're just trying to simplify everything to make it easier, you know, for the subdivisions, and you know, and we're still gonna end up going to some parts of, say, soil, and you know, and all that with Marla. So you know.
Yep. So similarly, solar orientation does not appear, not even in the section on energy conservation. So unless we're going to make major changes to that, I would say that this is another strike.
Yes.
Okay.
I will concur with that.
All right. Stabilization does occur, as does stormwater detention. Marla has made a suggestion to add a definition for stormwater management facility, but that term does not appear. So at this time, I'm not going to suggest adding it unless in revisions to some of the sections that she and I will be going over, it comes into play. As of this moment, it does not occur. Street definitely appears. Street hierarchy does not appear, which is interesting because it is a term that does get frequent use in planning, but it is not in the body of these regulations.
Do you think we should leave that in there in case down the road?
Well,
we didn't leave any of the other ones in there, so.
Yeah, I mean, the reason to leave it would be if we think we're going to add it into this draft.
Right, yeah, I'd strike it then.
Yeah. Similarly with street plans. Although I'm just going to leave a note to myself to double check that just in case I did the search by street plans and not street plan. I'll double check that, but it does not appear to occur. Structure does occur, subdivider, subdivision obviously are the main subjects of this document. Subdivision. Okay, so we do have some commentary here from Janet. I will ask Dennis to review the definitions of subdivision and re-subdivision for compliance with state statutes and to forward comments. So I did have the language for re-subdivision. We already went over that. I'll touch base back with Janet on that. I think this is probably pretty close to conforming with state statutes, but I'm just going to drop this here. Oh, look at that. For some reason, we have subdivision conventional. This term does not occur and should absolutely be stricken. It's a subdivision or it's a conservation subdivision. A conventional subdivision is only a term that we refer to it for compare and contrast. It does not, it's not a term of its own. Strike.
Boy, you're getting a lot of good
Oh.
strikes.
Oh, look at that. I do have the statutory language right here. Oh, look at me. Look at me, not looking at my own comments. So here, let's compare and contrast the exact language of the statute with what's here. Subdivision. The division of a lot, tract, or parcel of land into 3 or more lots, tracts, or parcels, or other divisions of land for sale, building development, or lease. Subdivision is further defined in section 8-18 of the Connecticut General Statutes and in these regulations, and shall conform to the requirements of sections 8-25 and 8-26 of the Connecticut General Statutes. Here is the exact language of the statute. The division of a tract or parcel of land into 3 or more parts or lots made subsequent to the adoption of subdivision regulations by the Commission for the purpose, whether immediate or future, of sale or building development, expressly excluding development for municipal, conservation, or agricultural purposes, and includes re-subdivision. Unless anybody has a strong objection, I'm going to copy and paste from the statute.
Yes.
I agree.
I should have known that I would have actually already looked that up. Okay, conservation subdivision, a cluster development is compiled. Oh, Marla's just got a little language edit to make here, so we don't have to go over that. That's an easy one. That's just a construction thing. Topsoil. For some reason I have it highlighted, but there's no comment next to it. That's interesting. I don't know why that's highlighted. I have no idea why that's highlighted. The term trip, meaning trips in a car, does not occur and has really no value or applicability.
Strike that.
Does not occur. Town is a specific term referring to the town of Thompson. That's fine. Town road does occur. Marla does have a comment within regarding the numbering of the ordinances. That's not something we have to go over now, and that's just in reference to the fact that they're doing the online codification. Some of the numbers might change, so I'll highlight that just to refer back to the ordinance number, or to ask Deb if she knows what the change is going to be. The term use does not appear because the subdivision regulation does not refer to the use of land, but only to the subdivision. So we don't need this here. All right, here we have a compound comment. And I can certainly read you Marla's comment, which is in terms of the definition of front yard, the area between the primary structure and the front lot line. She wonders what primary structure means, which is fine, but none of these terms occur. Front yard, rear yard, side yard, they do not occur in this. So I think we can consider this comment to be moot if we agree to stick consistently with our logic and not include terms that don't occur in the regs.
All 3 definitions?
All 3.
Front, rear, minimum. I agree.
All right. Water courses does occur, but Marla has a specific request, which is to use the statute citation. I will get that from her. That is her area of expertise, and I'm not going to, I wouldn't contradict her there. Same thing with wetlands. Oops. And that is it for Articles 1 and 2. So good work on that. So I'm going to save this so I can work on it, you know, make all the changes for tomorrow and redistribute. do-do-do-do. Where am I putting this? Put it here for now. Email it to myself after we're done. Okay, so that is saved. So I'm going to stop this share, and I think, Gloria, correct me if I'm wrong, we have one more agenda item, right? Which is to just look at the schedule.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, so you guys talk amongst yourselves while I find it and pull it up.
Thanks, everyone. While she's pulling that up, thank you, everyone. Excuse me, for being here tonight, for your comments and thoughtful consideration of those definitions. We know how tricky a definition section can be, so thank you.
Okay, so here's the proposed schedule. And this is based on the preferences in the doodle poll. Obviously, there were some weeks. Oh, and there's a missing one here, which is Thursday, the 17th. So Gloria, make a note of that to yourself.
Yeah, I've already added it.
Okay. So there were definitely some weeks where Thursday is the only option. There were only 2 weeks, however, where a date other than a Thursday came up as the majority availability, and that's this 23rd of February and 7th of March. Having said that, it is possible that the 2nd of March has become an available date because the branding subcommittee has been meeting on the first Wednesday. We more or less decided that the work of the branding subcommittee has been substantially completed. So we're going to roll that work back into the EDC meetings, meaning the first Wednesday of the month would therefore be open. So we can assume that that tonight through the 23rd of February that those dates are stable. I will I'll do a second just to see if those 2 weeks, the first week of March and the first week of April, if those are still the preferred dates. Does that make sense? Everybody understand what I'm saying?
Yeah,
If we could switch from the 7th on April, if we could go to Wednesday on that, that'd be better for me.
Okay.
That's one of the Thursdays that I have a meeting that's not very, I really can't miss that one.
Okay.
I if it
Yeah,
works, it
I'll
works. If not, I'll do what I can.
Yeah, I'll send it out in the poll because obviously what we want is for the majority to be available. But you did tell me that Thursdays are
Correct.
challenging for you, Ray, and I want to make it as easy for everybody as possible.
Yeah, whatever the majority is, it don't matter. You know, I'll do what I got to do.
Yeah, and it's okay to skip 1 or 2 if you need to as well. I mean, nobody's in all of them. I mean, we had 5 or 6 tonight, right? The subcommittee review is just sort of making the sausage, right? And then it's the final deliberation on the full document where we're going to go back in front of the full commission regardless. So if somebody misses a night here or there, it's no big deal.
Well, the good news is that John's getting more doodle polls in his life. So,
excuse me, talking about me?
we know how much you love the doodle polls, John.
Oh, yeah, I love them. Well, I'm here. I tell you, like I said,
You
it
sure
doesn't
are.
matter. You tell me tonight, I'm gonna be here. Actually, you got one date missing in there. Is that a reason? Thursday, the 17th of February?
It was just one we missed, and I sent an updated copy to Gloria, but this isn't, I apparently have the first email. So for the sake of showing these in the minutes, Gloria, just show the proper calendar with all the dates, and then that'll, be a form. I mean, not an official public notice, but it'll be just one more way that we can share the information with the public.
Okay.
Yeah, because
All
I
right.
got the updated one that she sent me the other day. And the only thing, one you're showing on now is missing the 17th of
Yeah,
February.
that's just the earlier copy, which is the one I
Right.
happened to pull out of my email. Okay.
I'm not being critical. I'm just showing what I got.
Okay, folks, anybody have anything else before we wrap it?
That's it.
did
Have a
good.
good night.
Okay,
Okay, good.
hearing nothing, I'll move to item 3 on the agenda and we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
Motion made by Mr. Lenke, seconded by Mr. Hill. This meeting is adjourned at 8:40 PM. Thank you very much, everyone.
Have a
Yep,
great
good
night,
night.
everybody.
Good night.
Good night.